Day 72, yes, our fellow Americans, their families, thousands of green card holders, SIV applicants that we promised if this day ever came, we would not abandon them. They were all abandoned by Joe Biden. Day 85 since Biden promised that he would not leave any American behind. It's 56 days since your president even mentioned all the men, women, and children that he deserted and completely abandoned to Taliban terrorists. In September, according to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, he said fewer than 100 Americans remain trapped, and apparently Lloyd Austin was either lying or was being lied to. In fact, the Biden administration just told Congress that, in fact, hundreds of U.S. citizens today remain in Afghanistan, 72 days later. Joe's turned the page. His press secretaries and the media mob also have abandoned any mention of their fellow Americans, and that's not all. According to the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, there are still, quote, thousands of U.S. green card holders, trapped behind enemy lines in Afghanistan, people that have a legal right to live in this country, thousands along with their families. And meanwhile, U.S. soldiers stationed in Syria were recently attacked by Iranian drones carrying explosive charges. Thankfully, no American casualties. Tonight, it is unclear whether the Biden administration plans to respond in any way. Here now with more, former Secretary of State, Fox News contributor Mike Pompeo. Let's skip around the globe a little bit. Let's start in Afghanistan. They told us it was under 100. Now we know it's hundreds. Now we know it's thousands of green card holders. Day 72, Mr. Secretary, I don't see a lot of hope for those people getting out alive. And my fear is a Mogadishu or an ISIS capture of Americans, and then we know what's going to play out publicly.
Sean, this is tragic. They clearly misled the American people, not only the president, but the Secretary of Defense, as you talked about. For the longest time, they talked about barely triple digits. We now know there are tens of thousands of people that have a right to return back to the United States of America. Our government has done almost nothing to bring them back. This is worse than just incompetence. This is an absence of caring about Americans and those who have a right to come to the United States of America. We've completely abandoned them. The president won't even talk about these things. We are not serious. We on our State Department Twitter feed today, we're talking about intersectionality and pronouns. When we've got Americans behind enemy lines in Afghanistan, this is deeply troubling. It is disconcerting. It is horrific to the family members of these people who are here in the United States, and we have a responsibility to get them back. I am now counting on private sector efforts to do this, and I hope that the government will at least not get in the way of these brave. Yes, Sean, exactly. I hope the government will at least not get in the way of these private groups who are trying to get folks home.
Well, wait a minute. The State Department sent out a memo saying, oh, if you have a chartered flight, you're not allowed to land in the U.S., even with U.S. citizens aboard. And if you get a country that will accept your charter, our permission will not be forthcoming if necessary. Let me move on, though, to Iran. We see there now hostile military actions against Americans, on top of our envoy to Iran basically acknowledging that it looks like Iran's going to be a nuclear power, and they seem to be willing to accept that. I'm not willing to accept that.
President Trump and I weren't willing to accept it either. We made clear this wasn't going to happen on our watch. Now countries in the region, certainly Israel, that the Iranians continue to threaten to wipe off the face of the map, but Arab states as well can see that America's not serious about defending them from the risk of proliferation in the region, nuclear weapons in the hands of perhaps multiple countries there. If the Iranians get a nuke, others are going to want one too, Sean. This is serious business again, and that it all comes back to an absence of strength. President Biden has demonstrated weakness. Remember, with respect to Iran, the Iranians launched missiles into Israel within days of them taking office. They would not have done that when we were there. They launched missiles from Gaza Strip into Israel, and the United States took days to say that the Israelis had the simple right to defend themselves.
What about China? The flying of their fighter jets over Taiwan airspace, endless talk of reunification, and then Russia gets a waiver to build their pipeline. It seems like preferential treatment for Russia and China, and then my imagination takes me to the fact that the Biden family has made a lot of money from both those countries. Fair question?
Fair question. Common theme. We had America first. These folks have a woke idea of national security, whether it's climate change or whatever it may be, and they don't understand that American power matters in the world. We don't need to send tens of thousands of our soldiers to demonstrate that power. We simply need to allow our energy companies to produce, our commercial providers to have the economic power and demonstrate the economic power, and unleash our military in a way that's not political but forceful. These are things that the Biden administration simply refuses to accept. They've adopted essentially the Obama policy of apologize for America wherever they go. It puts not only the United States at risk, but our friends and allies, not only in Taiwan, but in Japan and South Korea and in Israel. This is serious stuff, Sean, and this administration better get a handle on how to reestablish deterrence and credibility, or we're in for an awfully long next 3 years.
All right. Secretary Pompeo, great to have you as always. Thank you. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.